right, welcome everybody to episode number 10 of the Vintage Spotlight podcast. I'm proud to be joined by my partner in Vintage Spotlight podcasting, Leighton Sheldon of Just Collect. My name is Jeremy Lee. We are recording on April the 2nd, 2025. Leighton, it's good to be back here in the studio with you. How are you?
Oh, I'm great. I'm really happy to be here with you as well.
Awesome. Well, we have a really great guest coming on the episode, the podcast with us today, Mr. Leon Luckey. He's the owner of net54baseball.com, the forum community. We're going to bring him on in just a moment. But Leighton, we have a fun show in store for today. A couple of topics that we're really excited to discuss. One being the way the hobby is looking at rookie cards nowadays versus say 5, 10, 20, 30 years ago. Where is the rookie card in the hobby today? We're also going to talk about the importance and the place that eye appeal holds in the vintage card world versus say the technical grade from the third-party grading companies. And then we're going to talk a little bit about grails and what happens when you see a card you really want suddenly appear and you need to move things around to make it happen. So with that, Leighton, anything before we kick it off and bring Leon onto the screen with us?
Other than I'm very grateful for Leon making the time to join us. Real excited about today's episode.
As am I. I'm also grateful. I did see him on your Trading Card Therapy podcast not too long ago. Great guest and somebody who does not do a lot of podcasts and may not do a lot more in the future. So we are very privileged to have him. Before we do bring on Leon, I just want to say I really like your hair today. It is on point, looking good. Let's bring on Mr. Leon Luckey. Leon, welcome to the Vintage Spotlight segment. How are you doing today, sir?
Doing great, guys. How are y'all?
Excellent.
Good. Thanks for joining us, Leon. What do you think of Leighton's hair this morning?
I think it's awesome. I mean, when I had hair, it would sort of go like that sometimes, but that was back a long time ago.
Yeah, maybe we're both just a little bit envious that this guy's got all that hair, and here we are, with our hair follicle challenge heads.
Exactly.
All right, guys. Well, let's jump into the conversation. Leighton, one of the things that you and I really wanted to talk about today with Leon was the place that the rookie card has. And this is not something that we just sort of picked out randomly as a topic. It's because there have been some interesting sales in the hobby, not just recently, even going back. We all know that, let's take, for example, the big one, the 52 Topps Mickey Mantle, not a rookie card. The 51 Bowman is the true rookie card. But rookie card does not always mean iconic or most iconic card in the hobby. We've got the Michael Jordan, if we're going to come a bit more modern, the Star 101 from 84 versus the 86 Fleer. 86 Fleer, Beckett called rookie card, called the Star of the XRC. The hobby is it's a very divisive issue these days. We've got also the Babe Ruth, the 1916 M101 and all of its variations versus the 1933 Gaudies, which collectors seem to really enjoy. And there was a big sale of an Ohtani card recently, Leighton, that you'd mentioned. Why don't you jump in, Leighton, and just what happened with this Ohtani card? What was it, this Topps Now card that sold, and what were your thoughts on it?
Sure. So there was a Topps Dynasty 1/1. Ohtani signed with a piece, I believe, of his pants from his 50-50 game. And it sold for just over $1 million in heritage. And what I found really fascinating about it, and I think maybe Collect reported on it at first, is that, guys, this Ohtani card crushed the sale of any Ohtani rookie that ever had been sold publicly. So I think the highest Ohtani rookie maybe had sold for about $365,000, which, to be clear, is a lot of money. But it really is fascinating. And it made me wonder, as we were talking off air, Jeremy, kind of preparing for this episode of Vintage Spotlight, is this something that's kind of new that's been going on? Or is it something that's been going on behind the scenes with astute collectors like Leon that have been around a while, but maybe it's just coming to light now because there's these big sales happening of, for example, the 14 Cracker Jack Shoeless Joe or the Ohtani card for $1 million. Or to be fair, even the 52 Topps Mantle, Heritage just sold in a PSA Authentic, which, albeit did look amazing from the front, it's missing easily half the back, and it sold for $45,000 and change recently. And so I was thinking, as you were just touting off or rattling off a few cards, Jeremy, like, do you know the kind of quality of a Mantle you could get in a 51 Bowman Mantle rookie for 45,000? Like, you could get a nice card. You might even be able to get a 6, Leon, right?
Absolutely.
Like,
I was
and
underbidder
so
on a 5 not long ago that was perfectly centered, and it was about 35,000.
So,
Yeah.
so where's the hobby going is kind of my question, not just to you gentlemen, but to the folks who are watching this. I'd love for you to let me know or let us know in the chat, hey, you've seen the same thing, or you know what, you think these are anomalies, and based on everything you're seeing, rookie cards are still king. We'd love to know.
I think it's a great question to pose to the audience, Leighton, and love to, as Leighton mentioned, leave us a comment on the video, the podcast. But Leon, let's get your thoughts on this, because Leighton said it really well. You know, are these anomalies, or are these things that have been going on for a long time? And Leighton mentions the 1914 Cracker Jack Joe Jackson, the PSA 1.5 that recently sold on the Fanatics Collect Premier Auction. I happen to be the buyer. It's not the rookie card. The E90-1 is considered the rookie card. I made the decision for me that I wanted the Cracker Jack card for my collection, but I'm newer to that set and to Joe Jackson cards. Leon, what can you tell us about the history of, say, the Cracker Jack versus the E90-1, maybe the Babe Ruth M101s versus the Gaudis, and the Mantle as well?
Well, I mean, when I first got back into collecting, maybe 27 years ago or so, the first thing that attracted me was bike spoke, tire spoke, beat up Ernie Banks 54. And that's what got me back into the hobby, because I thought it was so cool. The guy had like $10 on it. I mean, it was crumpled. And this is 25 years ago, but I thought it was just the coolest thing. So I'm like, that's his rookie card. That is great. But now rookie has really morphed into a lot more than just a player's first card. It almost seems like it's sometimes his most popular card is more valuable, of course. I'll always think the 51 Bowman is Mantle's rookie. 52 is the first top card, but it's not the rookie. I think Beckett might have come out saying that Gowdy Ruth was a rookie because it was distributed everywhere. Well, 1933, there had already been about 500 different Ruths made. So certainly that probably caused a little of the confusion on the Ruth. And then we have to look back at minor league cards too. So as being a first card and maybe not a first Major League Baseball rookie card, Casey Stengel, the T210 comes to mind. A very rare and valuable card. Actually, that is his rookie, I guess. But rookie cards have been a phenomenon. I think they'll continue to be, but they're not everything. I don't collect rookies anymore myself. I prefer type cards that we don't see every day, or ones like you just bought in super condition, but not technically high grade. So, that's the fun thing about the hobby too. We can all do it however we want. We can kind of make our own definitions, if you will, of a lot of things. So it's a lot of fun.
I love what you say. We can make our own definitions. I believe in that so much. We can all approach this hobby however we want, whatever approach resonates with us. And, we can assign value or desirability to a certain card over another because of aesthetics or method of distribution or size of the card. There's so many different qualities of the card. I like when you talked about the Ernie Banks, the crumbled up Ernie Banks, because that card tells a story. And I love the stories that cards can tell. To me, that's super interesting. It's why I'm trying to trace back the origin of the 1914 Cracker Jack Joe Jackson that I recently acquired. I'm communicating right now with the gentleman who owned it two owners before me, and it's fascinating to hear from him where he got it from. So I think that's great. But back to the rookie card topic, if we can. I think the question that I'd like to kind of discuss a bit more is, are these just anomalies? Like, is the rookie card still the preeminent card of every player out there, generally speaking, outside of a few very iconic examples like maybe 86 Fleer Jordan, 52 Topps Mickey Mantle? If not, is the hobby starting to think for itself a bit more now, and not just have to take what's served up to us as, this is the rookie card, this is the one you have to chase, this is the one that has to be in your set registry, et cetera, et cetera? Is the hobby evolving now to becoming more open, Leon, in your view, to these iconic non-rookie cards being the placeholders in collectors' collections for these players. Do you see that transitioning at all?
Well, with what I do and a lot of the forum members on my forum, we a lot of times will get the our favorite card of a player from a set, and probably a tiny bit less rookie collecting today as there was 5 or 10 years ago, maybe, in the pre-War II space. Really, I see people getting iconic cards, great aesthetics, over the rookies. That's not to say they're not still valuable. The Ruth rookie, the M101 5 and 4, of course, and all the other rookies. I still cringe just a tiny bit, guys, when we say 52 tops Mantle and rookie in the same breath. It's just so not. There's nothing about that card that's a rookie. 51 Bowman is kind of obvious, but it as a technical person, it makes me cringe a little. It should be the first Topps card, which is no different. So, more valuable than the rookie, just like we're talking. But I don't know. I kind of went from rookies to type cards, but I think everybody does it their own way. In the new stuff, it's all prospects. You guys know that a lot more than I do. And I don't think I could ever get behind that. It's just too much. But so, I think people are more picking out iconic cards in the sets than they are going after the rookies today. Yeah. Not to say rookie collecting isn't big still, but I don't think it's what it was. When I see people posting cards, it's more iconic cards with great eye appeal and things like that.
The 52 Topps Mantle, it's as you say, it's not a rookie card at all, but the fact that it isn't doesn't take away from its iconicism.
Not
and the
at
fact
all.
that it's iconic doesn't take away from the 51 Bowman being the rookie card. They're
Yep.
both wonderful cards and worthy of most collections. The other problem I have with such a heavy focus on rookie cards in our hobby is that we often ignore amazing cards from later on in the players' careers.
Sure.
And that's something where, like you said, Leon, more and more people are posting non-rookie cards because they have terrific imagery, pictures of the player, artwork, color. I love it. Leighton, you're out there in the trenches. Are you noticing more and more people showing interest, let's say in your showcases at the card shows? Are you seeing more and more people show interest in non-rookie cards than maybe you were in the past?
I am. I think it's more specifically to pre-war. And Leon, of course, I'd love to hear your opinion. People care in all categories of cards, meaning pre-war, 50s and 60s, 70s and up, what the rookie card is for a player. Mm-hmm. But I would say on pre-war, there might be less people that care percentage-wise. There's more people that care about getting a great Gehrig or a great Ruth or a great Cobb. Like I was mentioning the other day, to me, the T3 Turkey Red Cobb is literally one of the nicest cards in the hobby, bar none, of any card, of any player. It's Absolutely. Not his rookie. And actually, other than the last few years, you could have bought that card pretty affordably. Right. So what I wanted to say, and I think is encouraging for the hobby, is I believe we're seeing this movement of folks thinking for themselves. Mm-hmm. And to me, as an entrepreneur, as a collector, I think that's wonderful.
Yes.
Because there's no reason why, once again, rookie cards are great. But Leon, you wouldn't believe it. Even to this day, I tell people how I found out about type collecting from you. There's still people that don't really understand what type collecting is. And I'm like, oh my God, it's the greatest thing ever created for collecting. Because once you break free of the set completion chain that, like my father held over me, like, if you don't complete this set, you're not good. And thanks for laughing. But now I can go out and get what I believe is probably the most aesthetically pleasing Ty Cobb on the market. And I don't actually care if it's his rookie, but I think that's super healthy for an industry that has grown by leaps and bounds in the last 20 years.
What do you think, Jeremy?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, well, thank you, Leon. I think that there are so many beautiful cards out there that are not rookie cards. So a couple come to mind. I'm going to shout out a couple cards that I think are absolutely stunning that I want to add to my collection. I don't have yet. They're not rookie cards. The 51 Bowman set, never mind the Mantle and the Maze, but the Yogi Berra and the Warren Spawn, two completely different images. You know, you got Warren Spawn and with his foot up as high as his head in pitching pose. And then you've got the Berra, a headshot with the nice, I think it's a green background behind him. It's just a couple of beautiful images. And these are, and then you consider his, I believe, Berra's 48 Bowman rookie, which is the black and white. And they're completely different. I love that card as well.
Which isn't technically his rookie, but that's okay.
It isn't.
No. Tip top. 47.
Okay. Yeah. 47 what?
D323 tip top.
You learn something every day. And is that a regular size card? Is it similar?
It's about this big. It's a little smaller, kind of square looking.
A little
but
smaller,
yeah, it's a regular card. D323 tip top.
So guys, this is really interesting because, and obviously the 48 Bowman is commonly misunderstood as rookie. Is that fair to say?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. Yeah.
So I ran into the same issue with when I acquired my Joe DiMaggio 38 Gaudi. You know, I have the number 250 in my collection without all the doodles.
Oh, I like the cartoons.
I don't mind I like the cleaner copy. That's what I have in my collection right now. And I acquired that in about 2013, I think, thinking it was his rookie card. And then I come to find out later, no, it's not his rookie card. It's another one. And that said, I still hold the 38 Gaudi in my collection as the early representation of Joe DiMaggio. And I probably am not going to make a switch to Tip Top for the Yogi Berra after I just learned this today, because I've come to love that card so much. Sorry, Joe DiMaggio. I might have said Yogi Berra there, the Joe DiMaggio. But I will tell you, back to what we were saying before, I heavily, heavily, heavily desire the 41 play ball Joe DiMaggio for its aesthetics. To me, that's the key. That to me is the key Joe DiMaggio card.
I picked up a 39 play. Oh, we're talking DiMaggio?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, DiMaggio. I don't know if I have a few 36s, which there's a few of them on the radar there. There might be a 35 postcard of his, but the 38s are awesome. Love the cards.
Yeah, they're such a cool concept back in the day, and reminiscent of what was going on, I guess, in pop culture in the late 30s that they came up with that design. But Leighton, what about you? Just on this, this revelation here today for me on Yogi Berra, literally just right now, did I learn that is not his rookie card, the 38 Gaudi DiMaggio. These are great cards, and I would argue the 38 Gaudi DiMaggio is nicer than his 36 cards that I've seen. I think they're black and white Gaudis as well. Yeah. So even if you collect Hall of Fame rookies, I am willing to make exceptions in my Hall of Fame rookie card collection to exclude certain players, let's say technical rookie cards or what the community considers, in favor of a better aesthetic, a nicer card that just resonates more with me. And I think, like you were saying, Leighton, more and more people are moving in that direction.
From what I can see out there, absolutely. And it makes collecting more fun because you're no longer kind of tied to, hey, I need that first card of the player. But on the flip side, and I know that Leon has seen this firsthand happen on the Net 54 message boards, where there's literally rookie card enthusiasts who, and we'll just use Yogi Berra, for example. I don't know of any Yogi Berra cards pre-47. Is it possible he's got a regional one? I don't know. But there's folks out there who just enjoy the hunt of trying to find that earliest card. But the earliest card for me doesn't necessarily mean the most desirable card. And I would tell you, as a collector, once you can enter that space, it's very freeing to not feel like you need to complete the set or you need the rookie. That's probably my most fun walking around the National is like, maybe I'm going to buy a photo right now, or maybe I'm going to buy an advertising piece, or, and I know Leon loves this, an early piece of hobby memorabilia, which, is more expensive than it was 10 years ago, thanks to guys like Leon and me.
I would agree with all those things. We all have our little niches, and I like to collect hobby periodicals. Type collecting has just really always been my foundation. I just like the different varieties, and then you can actually go for a type card set, which before I sold my first collection in 2010, I take that back, 2015. About 10 years ago, I was almost complete on the type card set. So one of each American card catalog number in my collection. But yeah, and I've gotten a few things from Leighton off of his site on eBay. T216 I remember pretty well, and Virginia Extra, super rare. So the hobby can just be anything. But going back to memorabilia and stuff, yeah, the hobby periodicals. I love those things, and the early letters. There you go, right there. Yeah,
Leon, they came in a collection, and I recently purchased, and I'm like, I can't wait to read them.
Yeah.
They're Trader Speaks from '79. You know, it's great.
I love it as well. So I love hobby adjacent items, things that are in the history of the companies that made the cards. Leon, here's a question for you. Do you have a favorite card out there that you think is maybe under the radar, or people don't realize yet just how potentially important it was to the player's career in their history? Like, you know, again, you just enlightened me about Yogi Berra. I recently learned about the Joe DiMaggio. You guys mentioned the Red Turkey Cobb earlier. You know, what are a couple of your real favorite, more obscure issues, Leon?
Oh my! I think the E221 Bishop's team cards are probably one of my very favorite. I've probably, besides the 4 I have, I've probably seen 5, 6 others in the 25 years I've been doing this. They're just beautiful. They're very colorful, but they're E221 Bishop's team cards. But they're not falling under the radar because they're never, ever for sale. I bought my 4 back from my first collection. In between that time, I had seen 3 for sale. But that's one of my favorite ones. I like the E100 Type 2s. The Type 2s with the blank backs on the Bishop cards are just phenomenally rare. They're really cool. The rarer the card, the better I like it. So in my first collection, I had some really nice stuff, and the second collection is not too bad. So flying under the radar, I still think T205 Cobb has a way to go. It's not it's a known card, but it just hasn't really caught the traction that I think that card should have, says the guy who owns 2 real nice ones. But you know, there's some other things. As far as esoteric cards, I mean, as a type collector, it's like asking which is your favorite child. Yeah. I have a lot of favorites. It's hard to say.
I'm not. Yeah, the T205, the gold borders are really interesting cards. I'm glad to hear you call that one out. Leighton, you know, we talked about the 52 tops that just sold this past weekend for $45,000, missing half the back. What were your thoughts, Leighton, on that price? You said, you know, you could get what you could get in the 51 Bowman Mantle, a PSA. You can get a PSA 5, a 6
or 6, depending on the centering. Yeah, depending on the centering,
right, for $45,000. But what were your thoughts, Leighton, on that price on that card, and what is going through people's heads when they are assigning $45,000 on a card where, you know, almost more than half the back is ripped away in paper loss? So how did you reconcile that price in your head, Leighton? And Leon, think about it too. We'll get your thoughts too. But what do you think, Leighton?
Well, I'm going to answer your last question first. I think for me that someone looked at that card and said, if it was complete, it is not only north of 100,000, it could literally be north of $1 million. And so even though we're all sitting here and saying, wow, that's a crazy price. And by crazy price, we're referring to literally half the back being missing because it was likely affixed to a scrapbook. And when it was removed, had about half of it, unfortunately, come off of it. And on the one hand, I personally wouldn't pay that, but I think it's partly because I know that the 52 Topps Mickey Mantle is not a hard card to get. And if I was going to pay $45,000 for a card, I might feel similar to Leon. I might actually try to buy a type card of Mickey Mantle. So even though I know the 61 dice Mickey Mantle is going to be well more than 45,000, that's kind of where my brain goes, as opposed to buying an aesthetically pleasing, almost like a mint looking from the front with half the back missing. But I say this, I think it means wonderful things for the hobby, because as much as that card sold for a crazy price, there's maybe a couple gentlemen sitting right here that wouldn't be in the running for that. But we might be in the running for $150,000 1.5 Cracker Jack Shoeless Joe Jackson, which someone else might think that you're crazy for. And so similar to what Leon said just a little bit ago, what makes the hobby great is we get to do it however we'd like. But I would say that when you have bellwether sales, like a 52 tops Mickey Mantle, literally missing half the back. So it's authentic, but it's almost like a 0.75. It's not even, it doesn't even have the whole card. For it to sell that kind of money, I wouldn't be surprised if it went to someone outside the hobby, because people in the hobby, at least from what I've seen through the years, back damage is okay, but that is total annihilation. But once again, if you're familiar with that 52 tops Mickey Mantle, and we're going to flash it here when we edit the episode so you can see, let us know in the chat. Would you ever consider buying a substantial, so whatever your purchase is that's substantial, if it's 500, if it's 1,000, if it's 5,000, would you ever buy a card with that visually stunning eye appeal from the front, but with such an atrocious back? And I'm going to put it now on Leon. I'm curious, Leon, would you do that? Would you buy a card like that if it was something that you wanted / needed for your PC?
Not if it's that common of a card. The only way I'm going to get a card like that is if it's unique or one that I'm not going to get otherwise. That would bug me. But I know from moderating the forum for a long time that there will be a percentage of collectors that don't mind that back damage. There's a percentage of collectors that don't mind crazy bad centering. There's a percentage of collectors that don't mind creases everywhere. So there's something for everybody. And that might be a collector outside the or somebody outside the hobby that bought the Mantle. Could be somebody inside the hobby. Like you said, it's got $1 million front and a $10,000 back. But, you know, that honestly, you only look at one at a time. So if you're looking at the front, you're all good. Just don't look at the back. Put it on display. No, that would not be something that would be good for me. I don't do good with pinholes. I tend to we'll see a great looking card, have one tiny blemish, and that's all I see. You know, it's like the really pretty girl with a pimple on her forehead. All I'm looking at is her forehead pimple, but that's not.
I was going to say it was like the red dot on the Seinfeld sweater that George tries to buy for Elaine as a gift, and it's like cashmere, and it's on sale. It's got the tiniest red dot, and then all of a sudden, once Elaine sees it, she can't see anything else.
It's the way it goes, you know, especially, but a lot of collectors are picky about what we want. Even the guys that don't care about centering, well, they might not want a corner crease, or they don't care about rounded corners or whatever. So we're talking about cards. This one right here is actually considered a rookie, but it's a low grade, but really good eye appeal. I mean, the centering on it was almost 50-50. So, and the back looks decent. It just got taken out of a scrapbook. So that's why the 1.5, but you don't see that many of those mutuals centered that well. When I saw it, I'm like, I love that card. I just want it in my collection. So there will be some cards I see. It's so great of a card. I'm like, I've got to have that. I can name several handfuls in my collection that way. Didn't need them for any reason, but I just saw it and I went, la, 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 gotta have it.
You mentioned that you don't like pinholes in cards, and that's something like when it comes to 52 tops Mickey Mantle, if I could find a PSA 1 that has that $1 million front, except that it has a pinhole in it, and now that the fact that it's in the PSA 1 holder is going to bring the price of that card down from $1 million to under $100,000, to me, all day long, there's huge value in that for me, because you're going to have a very pretty card that just has a small hole in it near the top somewhere, hopefully right on the break between the border and the rich blue background.
No, never.
But see, this is what makes the hobby so great. Now, listen, I have an interesting question, because it seems like we all love collecting here, and many of the people who are going to be consuming this love collecting. But we want to try to help people on this show. And Jeremy, we're talking about this a little bit offline. How do we advise someone for a low grade yet high eye appeal card? For example, Jeremy, like your Shoeless Joe Cracker Jack, right? Or like this Mickey Mantle Authentic that just sold at auction. How do you advise a fellow collecting buddy about what to pay for that unicorn of the low grade, high eye appeal. And I myself will go first. I find it difficult how to advise people because I'm either too low and too conservative, right? Or they think I'm completely nuts, right? Because I just love that card. And I just think it comes down to that beauty is truly in the eye of the beholder. So there may not be a steadfast rule, but if there's anything that can come out of this discussion to help a fellow collector, I'd love to try.
Yeah. And considering that I did just pull the trigger, a heavy trigger on a big card in the hobby, which was a low technical grade, the 1.5. It looks like a 5, a 6, or a 7 in pictures. It clearly isn't. There's a reason why PSA gave it a 1.5. But how do you decide what to pay? And how did I decide what to? I did a ton of research into it. And I think that's one of the, especially, it depends how much money you're spending and what that represents to you. But because this was, 7.5 times more than I'd ever paid for a card in my 45 years of collecting, I did a ton of research to get comfortable with my max bid, which, by the way, I went into the auction with a max bid of 100 plus buyer's premium. I ended up going up to 125 plus buyer's premium. So I did not listen to myself. I got caught up in it and I didn't want to let it go. And I'm glad that I didn't. So how do you get comfortable with that? Well, the first thing that I do is that, and it's hard to do it, I try to ignore the technical grade because I don't really care too much what the professional grader said. It really is just one or two people's opinions out there. And I do value my own opinion more than I value the opinion of a stranger who grades cards at PSA. And the other thing is that I recognize that eye appeal and technical grade, they're completely, in many cases, completely different, especially as you come down the pyramid of the grading hierarchy. 10s, there's not much of a gap between eye appeal and technical grade at a 10. And then 9, it's maybe, really until you get into those mid or low grades, you can't really notice a difference between technical grade and eye appeal. And I believe that eye appeal is more important than technical grade to the advanced, more savvy collector who really wants to have a piece that is just very pretty. I also love a low grade because that just saves you money at the purchase point on a card that presents well above its technical grade. The gap between the technical grade on my new 1914 Cracker Jack Joe Jackson and the eye appeal, they're oceans apart in value and in actual desirability. So I was willing to go higher than had ever been paid for one of these cards before because I actually compared it to all the other copies that have been sold that I could find images of.
Yep.
And it's as nice as the fives and higher. Yep. And it's way nicer than all the 3s and 4s that have ever been sold. So I was very comfortable because I trust my eye more than I trust the eye of the graders at PSA. Does that make sense to you guys, Leon? What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I think most of the people on my forum do pay for aesthetics over the grades, myself included. We see it all the time. T205 Cobb I have is centered really well. I would expect it to go for 25 to 35. It's in a 6 holder, but a 6 that was off center, it might not get half that much sometimes. When you have almost a perfectly centered card like your Jackson that you just got, that thing presents at a 5 or 6. So you look at what a 5 or 6 would be, which would be what, 250,000 or to 500,000 now, somewhere in there, and you get it for a fraction of that. That's a win. I think most of the collectors on my forum would do that. We don't have as many registry collectors. There are quite a few, and they're very steadfast and they put out the money for stuff. But overall, people are paying for aesthetics more than the grade, and myself included by far.
Well, let's hear Leighton because he's at the shows again in the trenches. What are you seeing, Leighton, when you're at the booths?
Well, a couple of things here before I comment on the shows. So number one, Jeremy, really appreciate you sharing that. You cannot underestimate the value of research. And it wasn't as simple as just looking up the pop report. Jeremy literally looked at every example he could find of the 14 Cracker Jack Shoeless Joe just to see, forget about grades. Where does his card stand amongst those? And honestly, it's a very humbling experience when you do that because it means you truly do love the card. You don't care so much actually about the grade. And I'd also say, just once again, I appreciate Leon so much joining us today for the Vintage Spotlight. But if you actually find yourself in this conundrum, let's say you're a week out of an auction and you maybe don't know guys like me and Leon and Jeremy, and you're like, you know what? Let me check out this net54baseball.com place. You could literally go on there for free, ask a question about a card in an upcoming auction, and guys like Leon or myself or Jeremy or other users and collectors on that particular or in that particular community, they're going to help you. And that to me is one of the coolest things about not just Net54, but about the collecting community in general, is that we all want generally each other to win and to be happy with our collections. And so as far as the card shows themselves, Jeremy, the reason why I brought up the question is because I have noticed that although there are some clients who will come to, our booth at a card show and say, wow, Leighton, that's a really nice Ruth Gowdy for blah, 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 3.5 or whatever the case is. I also have just as many say, hey man, did you see the comp? No, the comp. And I'm like, yeah, no, I saw it. I was the one who priced it. I believe that this example is nicer. And to be clear, right, it was graded recently. And what I'm saying is there's a lot of folks that just don't want to hear that information, to be clear, because they want what they want. They want to buy a really great card for a price that's lower than you want to sell it for. But you were asking me about the card shows, and I would say, as much as I find people like yourselves there, like-minded individuals who appreciate that eye appeal, there's plenty of people who see the eye appeal, but they want it for that same price of a not so nice of a 5. And I'm like, no, this thing looks like an 8 and it's in a 5 holder. You can't have it for the same price. Oh, but the comp, I'm like, well, then you should go and buy those other examples and you'll probably just be as happy.
Buy cards you're happy with, aesthetically pleasing. When I picked up this one, this is a 1.5 T206. You can't really see it that well on the cameras, but suffice it to say, it's probably one of the best 1.5s I've ever seen. It's got a little bit of spider creasing you can barely see on the front, and it's just an absolutely gorgeous card. But it would go for the price of a 3.5 if it sells, and I would be willing to pay that myself. And we would, Jeremy, you just did. You paid probably what an average 3 would go for. Is that right? 3 or 4 average?
Yeah.
What did you see when you were doing your research on what a 14 shoeless would go for in a 3 holder, just average?
Yeah, anywhere from 100 to about 170,000.
Yeah.
So I paid towards a high range for the 1.5. And back to the shows, like Leighton was saying, when I'm at a show now, I look for the lowest grades I can find, but I want to find PSA 1s, 1.5s, and 2s that shoot well above the grade. I think that's where there's just so much value versus, maybe my budget allows me to buy a 6 or a 7 in a certain card, but why spend that money when you can get a card that looks as nice or nicer for a fraction of the price? The lower the grade, the prouder I am of the beautiful card. It's so, and this is completely opposite of how it was when I first discovered grading and started buying graded cards 30 years ago. It wasn't like that. I thought the grade was correct. I was under the false assumption that technical grades are correct. And the fact of the matter is they're just not. They're inconsistent at best, which is fine. It's a human's opinion, that human, that day. So I understand what it is, but I think there's just so much gratification in finding those hidden treasures that are undergraded relative to eye appeal, not technical, because I understand the grading standards are what they are. I absolutely love that approach.
No, I was just going to say, I think it was a great tip. And I wanted to make sure that the audience recognized, because I don't think you've ever said it so clearly, Jeremy, and as plain as day as you just did. Go to the shows and just challenge yourself. Say, I'm only going to look at cards that are graded 3 or less. And then of those, take notes. Wow, this 3 looks like an 8. Or this 1 looks like the 54 Topps Ernie Banks that Leon described earlier in the show that was in Bike Spokes. But that's a great way to kind of filter out a lot of the noise at a convention. Just focus on the lower grade vintage and then from there discern what looks great for the grade.
And especially if you can buy them at prices that are reflective of that grade point. Because maybe, there are vendors out there who just You know, the PSA grade is the Bible. That's it, bottom line. And I love buying from people who are sort of a prisoner to that because they're not thinking outside the box enough, and I get to save money that way. And it's only really happened to me once I can think of, where I probably would have paid a lot more. The card would have got a lot more, but they thought, well, this is what they sell for in a 1 or a 2. So, you know, will you pay it? I'm like, heck yeah, I'll pay it. Yeah,
Sure.
I'll pay that. I would have paid double. So I'm not going to offer it up. It's their card. They had a price tag on it, but yeah.
We
I'm
we
all
don't want to
about
buy 7s and 8s. We just want to buy cards that look like them.
exactly for the price of half the grade. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
100%. Leighton, there's a couple of this. We actually have a pretty big couple months coming up in the hobby here with 2 different T206 Honus Wagners coming to auction. Mile High and Golden each have one of them. Leighton, what can you tell us about these cards? Have you looked at them yet? And what do you think of them?
I have, and you know, for those that aren't aware, right, the T206 Honus Wagner in recent years, even in low grade, has been selling for big money. So one of the things that I found really interesting, and I wanted to discuss with you gentlemen, and of course get feedback from people that are listening and watching, is we've now spent a lot of today's show talking about various aspects of eye appeal, but yet we didn't get to this aspect. And so the Mile High example of the T206 Honus Wagner that they're selling is a restored, authentic grade from PSA. But literally, the card was restored by whoever it was restored by it was presumably a professional, but by color enhancement, potentially even borders that weren't there before. And so then I looked at the PSA 1 that Golden is advertising, and it looks like most PSA 1s, right? You know, a lot of creasing, the back is intact, and it really had me thinking about, and Jeremy, as I was asking you just the other day, which example would I rather have? And although, of course, if it was the same price, my gut tells me, hey, I'll take the authentic because it has better eye appeal. Well, it's no longer as clear cut that the eye appeal is better because that eye appeal has been manipulated to look better. So I was just curious to discuss this with a couple of fellow card nerds and, you know, also get the opinions of others that might be watching, because it doesn't have to be a Wagner. It could be a Mantle. What if I was talking about a low-grade PSA 1 Mantle but was fully intact, front and back, some creasing, etc., and then I was talking about maybe a Mantle that was, the borders were trimmed off, they were added back on, major color enhancements, call it plastic surgery for cards, right? So do you want that original beauty, or do you want the one that was enhanced by plastic surgery? I don't know the answer, but I thought it'd be a fun discussion to have.
Well, for me, I don't really care for the trimming and the color added and all. So unless it's like a bike spoke card, I'm probably going to go for the original in a 1 holder. It just bugs me a little, but everybody's different. Everybody's different. So generally speaking, I would take the 1 over the AUT, especially one that was a Frankenstein type card that had too much added to it. I've seen there was a Just So tobacco card in the hobby from 1893, and I remember there was a Burkett, I think, that only had the front of the card or a cutout of just his head put onto another card or something like that. And it sold for good money, as I remember, quite a few thousands of dollars. It was considered as rookie. But the thing was like it was 2 different complete cards. It was like the front or a silhouette of himself pasted into another card. So, you know, that's just not going to be for a lot of collectors, myself included. So that's kind of, I guess, where I fall. I'd always rather have a okay looking 1 than an AUT. That's just me.
I think that's a popular answer. I think that would be my answer too, unless the price was so drastically different. I would expect and I might be wrong, we'll find out here in the next couple of months, but I would expect the authentic 1 to outsell the restored copy. And then depending on how much it outsells it by, if the authentic 1 sells for $3 million and the restored copy does $1 million, I'm out on both, by the way, but I would probably take the restored copy and save $2 million because it's, you know, a third of the price. Maybe come down to more affordable cards. So, and these are still, you know, very expensive. Let's talk about a Topps Mantle because it's such a popular card. You know, if you have one that's been like the one that Brian Gray recently bought for 16,000 with a hole punch in it and it was crumbled up and flattened out. Doesn't look pretty at all. I don't want that card in my collection at all, even if it's the Wagner or the Mantle,
Right.
maybe the Wagner, versus a Mantle. No, so that one sells for, this is not a great example because that only sold for 16,000. It was so low grade. But if you compare it to a restored copy that maybe had some trimming, some color added, et cetera, and that card was going to sell for $5,000, so wrong card, but good, right pricing here, I'd probably take the $5,000 card that had work done to it, just because it's such a nice example of the image that I covet. And maybe I would rather take that difference in money and put it elsewhere. It's a tough question, Leighton. It's really, really tough, because I want to enjoy the card itself. I once didn't buy a 52 Topps Mantle. This goes back probably 15 plus years ago. I was watching it, I think on eBay at the time, maybe PWCC. It was a PSA 1. No, it was a PSA Authentic. This thing was gorgeous. It looked like an 8 or a 9, but I'm sure the Authentic, I think at the time, was trimmed. Sold for like $15,000. I think I bid up to 11 or 12. And then I stopped because, well, it's trimmed, and so that's enough. Well, I'm out at 11 or 12. Well, I wish I would have bought that now, because I'm probably out on 52 Topps Mantles now. And that was a gorgeous copy. So in that case, I'd be willing to have a trimmed, altered card in my collection, because I can't afford the authentic copy that looks as good. I know I kind of rambled there, but go ahead, Leon.
No, I think it's all relative. I think you're exactly right. It's all price dependent. If I can get a great looking AUT card and it costs me $5,000, and the same card in a 3-holder costs me $45,000, then I'm going to take the authentic card. So it's for mortals like most of us that don't have unlimited money, which there are a few, almost it seems. Price is a lot of the equation on what we buy. So yeah, it's very price dependent. If there's a huge difference in price, AUT might be looking a little better. But for the things that I personally collect, that hasn't really been the case. I'm not into the 52 Mantles that much. Be more a 33 Goudy Ruth kind of guy. But everybody, that's what's great about the hobby. Like we say all the time, you collect what you love, and you can't go wrong if you do that.
Yeah. Leighton, these two Wagners that are coming up, do you think that they are going to sort of set the pace for the hobby? The Wagner is the most iconic card in the hobby, or at least the top 3 with the Mantle and maybe the 86 Fleer Jordan. They're all among the most iconic in the history of our hobby. Leighton, do you feel with these two sales that we will receive some instructive information moving forward on this concept of authentic, not so beautiful versus altered, beautiful, and the price points thereon? Is this going to be something that people can hang their hat on as they move forward with other not such expensive cards, but in similar scenarios?
It's tough to say. The Wagner is hyper limited. So no matter what version of the card is, one authentic, low grade, there's only so many people that can actually own it. Whereas the 52 Topps Mantle, even though, for example, it's still an expensive card, there's a fair amount of them out there, and you can get one today if you'd like one. And a Wagner, I'm not so sure. What I find interesting, I don't know if it's going to play out like this. I'm not saying I'd love to see this, but I think it would be interesting if the authentic sold for more than the one. Because I'm with you, gentlemen. If that authentic sells for $1 million and the one sold for $3 million, this is provided that we had the money, I would easily be happy with the authentic, saving $2 million and deploying that money in a variety of other places. However, if that authentic example sold for anywhere in the ballpark or potentially even slightly more than the one, there's no doubt that I would prefer to have the original copy. And I think that this discussion just proved that although we are collectors at heart, that the money component of what we're doing and our journey plays a substantial impact on what card or cards we may acquire.
It has to. We like to think as collectors that we're not doing this for the money. And I don't think we are. I think we collect because we just love cardboard. We love history of the sport. We love the history of even the history of culture and how it's reflected in the cards. Like mentioning like the 38 Goudy Joe DiMaggio, just what were they thinking at the time? The colors used. I love the history. I love that I get to own the history through cardboard, the different players you get. We watch the documentaries, we learn more about them. It connects us even more to the players. So it's it's a wonderful hobby. Just an overall a wonderful hobby. And when we find a card, when a card comes up at auction or it hits the market that we really want, how do we deal with those things? Just to change the topic to our final topic of the episode here, guys. It's funny, I bought this Joe Jackson card. It wasn't on my want list. The card was not on my want list for the same reason that the T206 Honus Wagner is not on my want list. I never thought I'd have the chance to own one. And then it came up in an auction that I was following, and I thought, oh my gosh, look at this thing. Can I make this happen? And I went to great lengths to make it happen. And how did I do that? Well, I used a hobby funding company to pay for it for me, because I don't have the money. So they pay for it, and then I pay them back in cards over time. That's a great option. But I had to know I could use them and know that it was there. And that was a great opportunity for me to use that service and to secure the card using other cards. But oftentimes we see cards we want and we've spent our budget for the year, so we can't buy them. What do we do in those situations, Leighton? What do you recommend? What do you do when you see a card come up at auction? You really want it. Maybe it's your grail. Maybe it's a card you've been waiting for 10 years. You didn't think it would come up, and now you don't have the resources available. How do you deal with that? Do you let it go? Do you go to great lengths? Leighton, what are your thoughts?
I like being put to a decision, like a poker tournament. I sometimes would lean in the direction of, wow, similar to you, Jeremy, such and such card wasn't even on my want list. I didn't even think I could get one in my lifetime. It's available. I'm going to see, and I'm a big fan of taking pen to paper. If I move these 3 cards, if I look at my cash on hand, blah, 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 what do I think I could reasonably come up with in 7 days and 10 days? Do I see any other of that example of that card being offered on the horizon? How important is it that I get it? And I do think that these companies that are out there helping folks like you, Jeremy, and others is a really cool way to go after a card at auction. But I would say at a card show, a dealer might be your best friend, because you might be able to make a deal with a dealer on a one-to-one basis. In other words, Leon sees a card, he really likes the show, it's 28,000. Meanwhile, he's got 2,800, so he's a little short. But he's like, I got a lot of cards at home. He gives a deposit. He writes up some contract with the guy. I'm going to give you $5,000 a month for the next 4 months. And if I don't give you money, I'm going to give you cards. Like, how many times I've done that in my career? A lot. Because someone wanted a Grail card they saw at my booth at a show, and they didn't have the means on hand necessary to make it happen, and yet we still did.
Leighton, you've had an E90-1 Joe Jackson in your showcase for quite, well, I don't know if it's the same copy, but I remember seeing it at the last National and maybe at the Fanatics Fest as well in New York last summer. And I can only imagine how many people walk by that and are thinking, oh my gosh, I would love to buy that. But, I don't have 60K on me. I've got 8 or 9 or 10. And, there are other options when you're dealing with vendors that have big cards in their showcase, expensive cards. And I think you just gave a great tip, Leighton. Ask the vendor if there's a way to work this out. Don't just get, especially if you really want it and you can work it out over time, maybe not right there, then and there at the place, especially if you have friendships in the hobby, people maybe with you who will, not only vouch for your ability to see the deal through, but as if I'm the vendor, I really want to know that you're going to love the card. I want to know that my babies are going to a good home again. And I want my card to be like the Joe Jackson I just purchased, when I was emailing with the second previous owner, I let him know, I said, I want you to know your old card has found a great home for at least the next 2 decades. And I think that makes someone, I know I'd feel happy if it was my old card. So great tip there, Leighton. Don't be afraid. Leon, do you have anything to add to that line of discussion?
What I would add is, as collectors, we have a lot of powder in our keg, so to speak, with our collections. So I always will trade something in my collection for something I want more. It's the same philosophy. So if I see a 100K card and I have 100K in my collection, I can usually work it out with whoever has that card. got friends in high places, references like you guys do, and we can usually make something happen. It doesn't happen often, but it can. And I told the one on the first episode I did with podcast with Leighton about the young that I got. I just got credit because the rest of my cards were being sold. But as long as I have a card collection, I've got stuff to be able to use to go buy other cards, basically, that I want. So that would be my tip.
Yeah, great tip. And that's what I've done with acquiring my grail that I never thought I would acquire. It's been a really fun experience. Okay, as we wrap up the episode, Leighton, we wanted to leave the audience with a question that we would love you guys to answer below in the comments here on YouTube or on podcast. And we thank everybody for tuning in. We definitely thank Leon Luckey, the owner of the net54baseball.com forum and community, for joining us today and sharing his insights. And so the question has to do with provenance, Leighton. And I'm gonna throw so first of all, Leon, you recently showed us here when you flashed it in front of Leighton and I and the audience who were watching on YouTube, your PSA 1.5 Ty Cobb red background portrait.
Yes.
And I thought to myself, okay, Leon, I'm gonna have to reach out to you because if and when it comes time to dispose of that card, I would like to get in line. I'd like to have a ticket and say, throw my hat in the ring and say, Leon, I'd like to be able to have a chance to acquire that card because that is a card that's on my want list, and I would love it to be coming from your collection. So that is important to me. Provenance is very important to me. These cards tell a story. That 54 Ernie Banks that Leon bought for $10 29 years ago, 30, whatever it was, that card tells a story. Part of the story is who owned the card, what they did with it, how much did they love it, why did they buy it, where did it sit in their home. Leon could pull that Cobb, right? He just pulled it on demand here. It was right there. I love that. Provenance is very important to me. It's not, I don't know if it's something that I'm going to spend more money on, but I'm certainly going to get more intangible value out of it myself because I want these cards are passed from collector to collector, hobbyist to hobbyist, decade after decade, and they have a story to tell if they could. And the more of that story that we can fill in, even for future custodians of these cards, the story goes with it. And I think that's just a wonderful aspect of the hobby, something that I love to nerd out about. So the question, and Leighton, I'm going to let you pose the question. You'll probably do a better job than I will. But if you don't mind doing that, Leighton, what is the question we're asking? How important is provenance?
Oh, sure. So I think it's kind of like two-part. Number one, do you, the collector, care about provenance? Do you care about where your card came from? Who owned it before you? Was it pulled in a pack in a drugstore, at a card shop? Whatever the case is, what kind of lineage is from the behind that card? And then number two, which I'm also fascinated with, is are you actually willing to pay more money for the provenance of a card? Now,
Yes.
to be clear, right, and I feel the same as you, Leon. I think in memorabilia gang, this has already been going on for a while. But to cards, this is kind of new. And what was really fun, at this point, it might have been a month ago, but Brady Hill hopped on with me a little while back discussing the All-Star Cafe Honus Wagner. And he definitively said on a multi-million-dollar card, he paid more for it because of the provenance. And so I'm curious out there. I know Jeremy's curious, and I'm sure there's someone on Net54 that's done this. But do you feel the same as we do, as us fellow card enthusiasts? Is provenance also important to you? And if so, would you actually be willing to pay more for it? Leon, since we have you as our guest, and we are so grateful to have you on the show, why don't you let us know what you feel about those two things? I'm curious.
Well, on the provenance, yes and no. If it's an original collection, I love that. Who doesn't love an original collection? There was one original T206 collection sold on my forum on the front page, some front page auctions we did a year or so ago, whenever it was. And those were original. This gentleman was about my age, 55, 60. I'm 63, but he got them from his grandfather, inherited them, and his grandfather collected them out of the packs. So that's the kind of provenance I'll pay for. those are still raw. I got 4 of them from the whole situation. I got a Joss T206, the Cobb bat off, and Lajoie and one other, but they're still raw. They're going to stay raw. That's the way cards should look. So I will pay more for provenance, but not all the time. I guess it's kind of let me hear the story and I'll see. But most of the times our cards don't really come with provenance. Very few times they do, and I will personally pay more for that.
I love what you said about, an original collection. And I think one of the reasons why people would be willing to pay more for the original collection is because, if you are certain that it came from the person who, was smoking those packs of cigarettes in the early 1900s, they are very likely to be untouched, unaltered,
Yes.
very original. I think there's value to that.
Oh, Jeremy, only because you brought it up. So let me tell you, even though I've had people tell me a tall tale or two through the years when they sell me collections, as a professional treasure hunter, and I'm getting the goosebumps now, once I go out on the road and I've identified, Leon, that this person is being genuine and it is an original collection, I absolutely am willing to pay more for that.
Yep.
Because you just know that these are untouched, unaltered, untrimmed. They've just been sitting there collecting dust. A true treasure find.
Yes, and that the eye appeal, though, typically, and I'm just telling you what I see from the road, if you take a single owner tobacco collection, even if it went from grandfather to great-grandfather to grandson, as long as it didn't get displayed at shows or on the wall, those cards, even if the grade's all the same for the other T206s you find out there, the eye appeal is usually off the charts. You can see the gloss. You can see the color really hit you on like a yellow Joss portrait. You can really experience it a little bit differently than you would with a card that's seen a lot of homes throughout the last 100+ years.
Leon, you mentioned when it comes to provenance, most cards, we just get the cards. There are no stories along with them because they have changed hands along the way several times, which makes those cards that we do have histories for that much more special. And I think and it's rare. It is very rare, especially you buy a card on eBay or on Heritage or Memory Lane or REA, wherever you buy it, and you don't know where you got it, where it came from. You don't even know who's selling it to you. Unlike at a card show, if you buy an E90-1 American Caramel Joe Jackson from Leighton's showcase, you know you got it from Leighton, and you can probably ask him where he got it from. There's the whole card show experience is satisfying in that way as well. So I think that back to the question to the audience, we want to get as many responses as we can, and Leighton and I will endeavor to address some of them in our next episode of the Vintage Spotlight. Do you care about provenance, or do you just want the card for the card, and do you not care about the history of that card? That's fair too. That's a fair approach. Not going to look down on it. I just personally like to see it, but like to hear. And will you pay more for known provenance and then celebrity provenance? Let's say the Gretzky, McNall, Honus Wagner, the Charlie Sheen, Honus Wagner, the Leighton just mentioned, among others. And then there was oh gosh, I always forget the baseball player who had
Charlie Sheen.
Young. No, I'm thinking about the Dimitri Young collection.
Oh, okay.
Oh, sure.
Right? For a Dimitri Young PSA 10 Hall of Fame baseball rookie, he had the whole thing done, all the Hall of Famers and PSA 10s that were available. I wonder how many of those were actually untouched, but that's another story. But will you pay extra for celebrity provenance, known provenance, or you just don't care? Give me the card in the grade and condition I want. Thank you very much.
Jeremy, a couple tips for the day. Buy cards with big borders and don't buy high-grade cards with minimal borders.
Agree. I love 100%, Leon. That's the first thing I look at when I went. Yeah,
where'd the borders go?
You say that, Leon, and I think to myself, but Leon, that is so obvious. But it's not. It's not so obvious. When I look at 1951 Parkhurst hockey cards, the Gordie Howe, the Maurice Richard rookie cards, I will often be doing an auction coverage show, and I will say, look at this 51 Gordie Howe. I love it. It's a full-bodied 51 Parkhurst. You probably heard me say that before, Leighton. Full-bodied because it's got the wider borders. Not to say that narrow borders are trimmed. These things were just cut differently back in the day. But yes, I love that tip, Leon. Something that may be so obvious that not everybody's thinking about it. So,
Good
all
deal.
right, great stuff, Leon. Thank you so much for joining Leighton and I here on our 10th episode of the Vintage Spotlight podcast. Leighton, anything you'd like to leave the audience with before we end this episode?
Just that I am very grateful that I've been friends with Leon for as long as I have, and he was kind enough to join us. And I will now reveal the reason why my hair looks a little bit the way that it does today. So unfortunately, yesterday I suffered a pretty substantial injury at tennis, and I have a sling, and I think I tore my rotator cuff.
Oh, no.
So yeah, I'm dealing with it. I'm trying to, keep a smile on my face, but I was only able to do my hair with one hand. And I don't know for how long. So if you see me on future episodes or at a card show, no, I'm not disheveled. I'm just hurt and struggling to, keep myself and my proverbial you-know-what together. But thanks for laughing, gentlemen. And Jeremy, great show. Leon, like I said, from the bottom of my heart, bud, really glad we've known each other as long as we have. And this was super a lot of fun.
Yeah, I appreciate the 10, 15 minutes turned into over an hour. Appreciate you guys having me on. It was a lot of fun.
All right. Thank you both. Leon, hang tight right there. Don't leave us, everybody. Please remember these episodes are available on Apple, Spotify, wherever you do listen to your favorite podcasts. Want to thank everybody for joining us. We'll be back again before you know it, everybody. Have a great rest of your week. This episode of the Vintage Spotlight is now over.